Sadaka, the Ireland Palestine Alliance, was set up in about 2010 by a small group of people who were interested in justice for Palestine and for the Palestinian people, and who felt that there wasn't enough direct political engagement with politicians, with Dáil Éireann, with a view to basically trying to put pressure on the political system for Ireland to take action. So I suppose the most important thing we've been associated with over the years is the Occupied Territories Bill, which was actually drafted by Sadaka, the original bill, in 2016. So that's 9 years ago. And now we're, I suppose, hopefully a bit closer to having it enacted. But in 2018 then, after taking the bill into Leinster House, trying to get politicians interested in it, Senator Frances Black decided, right, I'll take this on and I will push this. So she got it passed in the Seanad, and eventually Fianna Fáil took it on in the Dáil, but for various reasons it didn't progress into legislation. So we're now happy, I think, that the government has brought forward their own Occupied Territories Bill, and we're hopeful that within the next number of weeks that it will be passed by Dáil Éireann and that it will become law. So it's been a long journey, 9 years, and obviously when we started this process 9 years ago as Sadaka, there was no genocide in Gaza, but at the same time it was very clear what Israel's intentions were towards the Palestinian people, and we wanted to make sure that Ireland did something in response to that. So my own personal background, I worked in Trócaire for almost 30 years. I was the CEO of Trócaire for a number of years. I retired at the end of 2018, and the one issue that I felt I couldn't really leave behind me was Palestine. So I joined the board of Sadaka at that point.
Okay, and am I right in saying that plan to pass the Occupied Territories Bill is actually in the government's programme for government, is it?
It is, yeah. The programme for government, which was published in January of this year, contains the decision to pass an Occupied Territories Bill. Now, they didn't use the text of the bill that we had drafted and which Senator Frances Black had promoted. However, the bill is a government-drafted bill, and we're happy with that. The one issue for us, really, well, there are two issues. The first one is that the bill must contain a ban on goods from settlements, and it must also include a ban on services. Now, in fact, services is more important than goods. Goods are things like garden furniture, vegetables, dates, wine, cosmetics, all of those things that are produced in settlements in occupied Palestinian territory, and they're sold as the produce of Israel, which of course they're not. They're from stolen land. The other side of it is services, and that mainly is around technology. It could be financial services, tourism services, like for instance from Airbnb. And those essentially are services that are offered by multinational companies typically into the settlements. So the goods come out of the settlements, the services are offered into the settlements. And of course, that's absolutely illegal under international law as well. So we would be very disappointed if the bill only contained goods. And that's why we're insisting, and our campaign is asking the public to support goods and services. The second thing is, look, the bill has been delayed for months and months and months. The Foreign Affairs Committee scrutinised the bill in July and said, yes, this is good to go and it must be goods and services. Now the Dáil is back since yesterday. We have no idea when the government is going to introduce the bill. All we hear from Simon Harris is that, we're waiting for the Attorney General's advice on this. Well, they've had 4 months to get advice from the Attorney General. And by the way, this is advice that he has already given on the previous text of the bill. So we have no idea what the delay is. This, as far as we're concerned, is unnecessary, unhelpful delay, and it's a political delay rather than anything to do with the draft legislation itself. So again, we're asking the public to get in touch with their local TDs, whatever party they are, government TDs, opposition TDs, and basically say, we want goods and services and we want that bill introduced now. Our ideal would be that the bill would be signed into law by Michael D. Higgins before he leaves Áras an Uachtaráin. But even if that doesn't happen, we want this bill to be law before the end of the year. And our fear is that the government will allow this to drag on and that it'll drag on into 2026. And then, they're constantly finding some excuse to delay it. No more delays. That's our message.
I've heard a couple of critics of this legislation say that the bill is largely symbolic and would not have any real impact on Israel's occupation policies. Is your campaign, Éamonn, a statement rather than something practical?
It's both. First of all, the practical bit. So there is trade with illegal settlements. There are 750,000 Israeli settlers living on Palestinian land. There's a lot of economic activity going on there, and some of that ends up in products in Ireland. We also know that there is a lot of trade in services with the settlements. For instance, Airbnb, which is headquartered here in Ireland, has on its website, and anybody can go on the website and look at this, there are properties on the Airbnb website which are in settlements on stolen land stolen from Palestinians. So that's practical, that exists, that is real trade. On the other hand, Ireland is a small country. We are, at the end of the day, talking about relatively small amounts of money and trade in the context of, let's say, Israel's trade with Europe and the settlements trade with Europe. But at the same time, we have to do what we can. We cannot just sit by and watch a genocide and watch the destruction of Palestine, its people, its communities, its economy, its children being slaughtered every day and continue to do nothing. And our politicians, they talk a good game, but so far they've done nothing. It's time to act.
Okay, Éamonn, am I right in saying that yourselves in the campaign might have some degree of nervousness, and I imagine that the Irish government might have too, that if the bill gets enacted, it puts Ireland at odds with the US, potentially harming our diplomatic and economic relations with them? Is this a real cause of concern to yourselves, Éamonn?
The short answer is no, and I will explain why. First of all, there's a genocide taking place. We cannot allow a situation where our country just sits by and does absolutely nothing when thousands of people are being slaughtered in Gaza and when the land of the Palestinian people is being stolen out from under them literally every day. The reality is that the number of American companies involved in the settlements and which are in Ireland is very, very tiny. And even those companies which are here, their business with the settlements is a tiny fraction of their overall global business. Like, for instance, Airbnb has something like 8 million properties on its website all around the world. There are something like 400 in illegal settlements. That's a tiny, tiny fraction of its overall business. So removing that business from its website here in Ireland is not going to undermine the business of Airbnb. It's the same for others, for tech companies, other tour companies like Booking.com, Trivago, whatever. So we are not afraid of this, but I think ultimately we have to be on the right side of history here. And I think that, most American people now are on our side as well and understand what is happening. And the American government is complicit in this genocide as well. They provide the bombs, they provide the aircraft, they provide the technology that enables Israel to commit a genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, mass murder. And the Prime Minister of Israel is the subject of an arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court. I mean, how can we continue to engage with this country in this way and say that, our economy is in danger? First of all, our economy is not in danger. That's scaremongering, and we have to call it out. And secondly, the potential economic impact for Ireland is absolutely minuscule.
Okay, Éamonn, how disappointed are you in Sadaka on a campaign as well with the European Commission response or lack of response to what is going on in Gaza for the last nearly 2 years?
Well, the big thing to note there, Darren, is the hypocrisy at the level of the European Union. When Russia invaded Crimea in 2014, they introduced all kinds of sanctions on Russian politicians, Russian businesses. They sanctioned trade, they sanctioned services. And then when Russia launched a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, they ramped up all of those sanctions against Russia. At the same time, Israel is a most favored nation from the perspective of the European Union. It is quite outrageous to see the way that they have pandered to Israel, even allowing a wanted war criminal, Benjamin Netanyahu, to travel to Europe, to visit European capitals, and nothing happens. Europe's reaction to what has happened in Gaza in particular is absolutely outrageous. I don't know how these people sleep at night when they see what's happening to the men and the women and the children of Gaza, and they continue to do nothing, and they talk in platitudes. It's disgusting to see the way they behave. Ursula von der Leyen calling out the killing of Ukrainian children by Russia, perfectly right to do so, and she has not a single word of empathy or compassion for the children of Gaza. It's quite outrageous, to be honest, and it makes you lose faith in the European Union. It's a project that says, well, we are a moral light and a light to the world in terms of our values and our democracies. Well, I'll tell you, that's looking pretty wretched at the minute.
Yeah, I know that the European Union, of course, is a collection of states, so even on a national level within the EU, am I right in saying that a lot of countries have, a lot of prime ministers across the EU haven't even spoke out in their own national parliaments? Because from one point of view, you can somewhat understand to some degree that it could be hard to coordinate from an EU level across the EU together at the same time. But I read someone saying yesterday in the media, even in some countries, I think maybe Germany and other countries, like the prime ministers of these countries in the EU aren't even speaking out strongly to their own people. Is that true, Éamonn, is it?
Yeah, that's true by and large. I mean, I think the level of support for Palestine in Ireland isn't really evident in most other countries. I would say Spain probably is an exception. But certainly in Germany, obviously there is a tragic history for Germany in its treatment of its Jewish population and the Jewish population of Europe, going back to the Second World War and before that. But at the same time, Germany's responsibility isn't to defend and protect Israel at all costs. The lesson of the Second World War is that Germany's responsibility is to prevent genocide and atrocity crimes. That's its responsibility. That's the learning that the German people should be taking from the Second World War. Not to support Israel, even in a situation where it is committing genocide. Now, yesterday we heard that Ursula von der Leyen and Kaja Kallas, the foreign affairs spokesperson of the EU, are publishing proposals that would remove some trade preferences from Israel in trading with the European Union. Now, we also hear that Germany is likely to oppose the implementation of those proposals. I mean, I think that is quite disgraceful. The proposals aren't particularly dramatic, to be honest, and they need 2/3 of the members and 2/3 representing 2/3 of Europe's population to actually pass. Now, it's still unlikely that Germany will support them, but hopefully enough other countries will support them that they will get the 2/3 majority required. But at the end of the day, that's still a very modest set of proposals at a time of genocide.
Okay, Éamonn, it's great talking to you today for the first time on AirFM. Just before you go, I know you said that you hope the campaign to pass the Occupied Territories Bill, the legislation is passed before the end of the year. Do you have any idea of whether it will be passed before the end of the year, whether it'll be a matter of weeks or months or longer, do you know?
Well, our hope is that it will be weeks. And certainly we would hope that this would be done and dusted by the end of October. The Taoiseach has said that it will be done in the coming weeks, but he's not specific, and he keeps telling us that he's waiting for advice from the Attorney General. So can he please phone up the Attorney General and get the advice tomorrow and then move? And if any of your listeners are interested in doing something practical, well, two things. First of all, they could write to their local TDs basically saying, we want this bill passed now, and it must include goods and services. And the second thing, anybody who might be around the city centre later on today at 4:30 could please come along to Kildare Street, just outside Leinster House, where there will be a large gathering of people. We will be raising our voices to tell our politicians that we support the Occupied Territories Bill, we support the Palestinian people, and we want action now.